Hello and welcome to the We Need Water podcast. My name is Michael Brent and I'm the Water Resources Manager for Cascade Water Alliance in King County, Washington. Cascade is a municipal water supplier providing drinking water to more than 380,000 residents. I'm glad you're here. I want you to truly care about water and make it your personal mission to become a steward of this incredible resource. Our topic today is organic farming. We're going to discuss what that is and how it relates to our water resources. Our guests are Anita Waghani and Chris Hoffer with Tilth Alliance, a nonprofit organization based in Seattle that supports organic and regenerative agriculture in the Seattle area and across Washington. Anita is trained in permaculture design, soil and water stewardship, and she's a master gardener. Anita has a master's degree in computer science from the Illinois Institute of Technology and a bachelor's degree in business from Mumbai, India. She loves using the harvest from her garden to cook, preserve, make herbal teas and medicine. She is constantly learning and experimenting using local, seasonal ingredients to make her family recipes. She is an avid yoga practitioner. Chris is the director of the community education at Tilth Alliance, where he has worked since 2014. He supports a variety of community-based programs, including classes for adults, senior wellness and nutrition education, environmental stewardship, community gardens, and partnerships with community-based organizations. He has a particular passion for composting, drip irrigation, edible landscapes, and native plants. Outside of work, Chris enjoys cooking, creating an edible home landscape, restoring Seattle's urban forest, and backpacking through the Northwest. Welcome.
Thanks, Mike. It's good to be here.
I'm glad you're here. Nice to see you.
Thank you, Mike.
Very good.
It's great to be here.
Chris, tell me about Tilth Alliance.
Sure. Tilth has a pretty long history. So it goes back, and this is the legends and myths that I've been told. So apologize if any of it's inaccurate. But my understanding and my belief is that Tilth really started out of this movement back in the 70s. Wendell Berry, the famous professor, farmer, author, came to town. There's a big conference and talking all about growing food organically and farming. And it just inspired this, what we kind of call this Tilth movement in the Northwest. And it led to all sorts of different groups forming in, some in Seattle, some in Oregon and Washington, all around this idea of caring for the soil, organic growing and agriculture. And really that's what led to what many folks, if you're, in the Seattle area, know as Seattle Tilth. And then more recently, a handful of years ago, Seattle Tilth, which was focusing on, organic gardening, urban agriculture, merged along with a couple other organizations. One was Tilth Producers of Washington, again, started out of the same movement, was actually based in the same building in Wallingford in Seattle. But their focus was more on supporting organic farmers across the state. And then a third organization, Cascade Harvest Coalition, which was also in the same building. So we're all neighbors doing similar work, and they were more on the regional level, connecting consumers and organic farmers. So we sort of all joined forces, became Tilth Alliance as an organization. And so what that means is that we have this huge range of programs and opportunities to engage folks around organic agriculture and growing food, from, teaching classes on how to grow your own food at home, to summer camps and youth programs, to working with farmers. We do peer-to-peer farm walks and podcasts and a big conference to connect farmers and support organic agriculture, as well as programs like the Rainier Beach Urban Farm and Wetlands, where we do a lot of urban agriculture programming and connecting folks to produce from local farms. So a lot of different programs we do. It's a really exciting organization to work for. I actually, my first experience at Tilth was as a volunteer. I went through their Master Composter program, which is a program that's still going on. It's a great opportunity where they train up folks to learn all about composting and how to build healthy soil. It's a really great organization to work for.
That's nice, Chris. If that story about the formation of your organization isn't true,
I
it
agree.
should be. And I had never heard that before.
Mike, I met Mark Music, who was one
Yes.
of the original founders of Tilth at a conference in Eastern Washington. We were on a same bus ride going to visit a farm, and he actually told me
Okay.
that story. And so I do believe it's true. And he also showed me a letter that they had, that was written by Wendell Berry to them.
Wow.
Um, I guess so. It's
Well,
true.
as a native Kentuckian, I really appreciate that story. I did not know about the Wendell-Berry connection. So I've learned something important already in our first few minutes. Um, Anita, how did you become involved with Tilth?
So my connection with Tilth was like Chris. I also 10 years ago maybe I took classes with Tilth. I took a composting class, and then
I
there was a
remember
class
that.
that actually Chris was teaching. It was on water and water wise usage or water wise gardening. Was it water wise gardening? And it was at a Redmond facility, and it was free to the participants. And he had this show and tell enviroscape, and I had so much fun listening and looking at it. And it was a hands-on activity, and I was hooked. And then I joined the soil and water stewardship class. That was in 2017, and since then I've been involved with. First as a volunteer, a participant, and then intern, and now I co-lead the program Soil and
Well,
Water
yet another
Stewardship.
connection we find because years ago, when I used to do a lot of classroom presentations myself, I used the Enviroscape model as well. And yeah, it's a fascinating tool to get across a lot of ideas.
Yeah, if folks
That's
haven't
really
seen
something.
it
That's
before,
true.
I know I've seen a lot of other organizations that use it, but it's just this really cool landscape model, and you have little like plastic houses and cars, and then you can like spray water to simulate rain, and you can really you add like pollution, like sprinkles or food coloring, or all these fun things.
Soy
Yeah, soy
sauce.
sauce, whatever you got, so that's not toxic. But it just shows how watersheds work, and it's I think probably designed for kids, but I think adults have just as much fun with it as kids do.
Well, that's the thing. I remember I used it for years in classrooms, and then we started having some. I can't even remember for sure, but some presentations where adults were there. We were covering the same kinds of topics about watershed protection, but it was with an adult format. And I remember the adults kind of elbowing each other, pushing people out of the way to get around where they could see. And I thought, well, that's really something. It has just as much appeal for them as the kids.
It's a very powerful visual display of how the toxicity moves through
And I
our
think the
urban
hands-on
It
cities and
really is.
aspect, I mean, that's
environment.
a big part of TILF. I think our culture and history is, doing hands-on education or experiential where you can really, get your hands in the dirt or, not that we also do online classes, which we try to make as engaging as possible, but it's really that in-person hands-on experiential learning that I think helps people just really get excited and feel empowered to practice organic gardening.
I totally agree. Totally agree with that. We're doing a ton of remote learning right now, and we have ever since the beginning of the pandemic, and that's fine. But still, there's no substitute really for getting outside and putting the senses to work, touching things, smelling, and yeah, it's there's no substitute for that. Um, Anita, break this down for us. What is organic farming?
So, to me, to me, organic farming or organic gardening is just scales of things. Organic farming is larger scale, and organic gardening would be on a smaller scale, but the principles would be very similar, or I would also say same. Soil health would be the first priority, um, and the second would be biodiversity. Um, uh, no use of chemicals like synthetic chemicals. Of course, you still use fertilizer, but not synthetic fertilizer. And those are the, I think, the basic foundations of when we talk about organic gardening or farming. Also, water conservation, thinking of usage of water, and especially I'm very I have done only gardening in Pacific Northwest, and our growing season, whether it's on the farm or in the gardens, is in the dry season. So water conservation is of
Hmm.
really great importance. So that is what I would say organic gardening is to me, or farming is to me. um, you focus on soil health. So when I say soil health, what does that mean is that there is organic matter in your soil, there is a lot of biome in your soil that is active, there is fungal mycelium activity also in your soil. Um, you use you avoid using heavy equipment. In fact, talking of Wendell Berry, he still uses, I believe, horse on his farm,
Yes.
horse-drawn equipment on his farm, which is very interesting. Um, and People talk of no-till, but it's not really no-till. There is some tillage that you have to do. It's only in the top surface of the soil. And Another thing that you do is you protect the soil. So when you, at any given point, your soil will always have something that covers it, whether it is cover crop or your food crop or mulches. There are different mulches you would use. That all of this would prevent erosion or washing away, leaching of nutrients from the soil.
It's
So to me, that is organic farming. Chris, do you want
Um,
to add
well,
things to
actually,
it?
one of the things that when I think about organic practices, I've really been inspired as I've visited and seen your yard, Anita. Um, I don't know if you want to share a little bit just about, because I think that's just, maybe for folks listening in that might, hearing kind of your story. And I've had a similar story in my yard too, but I really like hearing about yours because you've done some pretty cool stuff that really illustrates everything you talked about.
I'd love to. I think Mike has also seen some time ago, but it's quite changed though, Mike. You have to come back again. But so after I took my classes at Soil and Water Stewardship, I got super excited. And I came back to my garden, and we had a lawn then. We had lawn in the front yard, lawn in the backyard. We had a landscape company that used to come weekly basis to take care of my lawn. And also we had another service that I think it was True Green or something like that, that came 4 or 5 times a year to aerate, fertilize, use all kinds of chemicals on the grass. Because in my mind, I had this I don't know where it came from, but I guess from the community and society, that your yard has to look a certain way. And the neighborhood I live in, everybody's yards look very similar, very landscaped, very clean, very trimmed and pruned. The grass is always green. And after I went through soil and water stewardship, I think it transformed me in understanding the landscape a little better. And though I didn't have a lot of knowledge, I pulled the lawn out. I flipped over my lawn, not having any idea what I was going to do next. So, but when I was actually pulling the lawn, we flipped, my husband and we cut the lawn into pieces and we flipped over. So the lawn has like a thicket of root, and below it, it was dry, it was gravelly. There was hardly any life in the soil. We didn't find a single earthworm or a bug in the soil, and that surprised me. I found the soil was just gravelly, compacted. I saw that under the grass it would be rich soil, but it wasn't. And then over the years, we've used mulch, a lot of wood chips, and mulch the area. Then we put raised beds, and now we grow food. Every part of my yard is either productive for me or for insects or birds. It's alive. You can sit out there and you will hear different birds. At the last count, I've been learning birding these days, and I think we have at least 18 different varieties of birds that pass through or live on this land. It's just really, really exciting. So, and we have lots of earthworms now. So, and the land is so productive now that not only I'm able to feed my family of four with a lot of food crop through spring, summer, and fall, but I have also been able to donate to food banks the excess that comes out of my garden, also to my friends and neighbors, though the neighbors are sick of getting zucchini. So no more zucchini this year. But yeah, it's been quite exciting. I've gotten to know my neighbors much better because of being they watch me gardening, they stop, they ask me
Sure.
questions, they want to see. I was telling Chris that there was a week a couple summers ago when I was out of town, and my post delivery person who loves my yard and who takes time to always deliver mail and then walk through it offered to water my garden
So a
while I was
secondary
gone.
benefit is that it really becomes a
I
community
know
building exercise. Well,
it
that
Yeah, I
is.
have that in
that is
It
just
is.
with
great.
my
Yeah,
yard too, because our main garden area is right by the sidewalk. It's the front yard, and neighbors walk by all the time. You get to chat with them, and I don't want to brag, but like they always are like, "Oh, we just love your yard. It's like the most beautiful thing," and it is. I think that community piece is actually also a part of kind of the organic farming and agriculture movement. Is you're growing food in community and with community, and that even happens with your can happen with your home garden too.
Right. Well, okay. This all sounds almost too good to be true. So, Chris, talk to me about how uh, what you and Anita have just described. How does that differ from traditional gardening, farming?
Yeah, I think of well, I would say truly traditional farming and gardening is what Anita just described, but
Okay,
it's
you
it's
got me.
it's terminology. The term like conventional, quote unquote, conventional or traditional. It actually, I think, the more accurate term is industrial agriculture, and
Sure.
industrial agriculture, unlike everything Anita just described, it really is about extracting as much as possible, whether that's from the land or from the people growing the food to make a profit and fuel this industrial system. So instead of caring for the soil, it's sort of like, well, let's just till and plow the soil as much as we can to try and get this real short term gain and get rid of the weeds. And when you do that, you destroy the soil health and its ability to hold nutrients and provide nutrients. So then um, you generate all these chemicals, synthetic fertilizers to support the plants because there's nothing in the soil that runs off, pollutes local waterways, creates algal blooms, and it just wreaks havoc. And there's a huge amount of contribution to the climate crisis from actually creating these synthetic fertilizers. And then you're going to have all these pests because you're typically in industrial agriculture, you're growing a single crop. Maybe it's all corn. And that's just like a buffet for all your local pests that thrive on corn compared to like a mixed vegetable approach where you rotate crops where, there's just this acres and acres of this one crop that's just the perfect environment for that one pest. So with industrial agriculture, now you're having to use all these pesticides and herbicides to get rid of the weeds. And so you're just relying on all these chemicals, all for that sort of short-term benefit. And then before you know it, that land actually loses all of its potential. I mean, you have to keep adding more and more of these chemicals to even make anything. And then at some point, you sort of give up and you find some other land to then kind of repeat that process. And it's why locally we have across the country all of these local conservation districts, soil conservation districts, where they all started was, going back to when, the Dust Bowl and just mass wide scale destruction of soil health. So just to say, it's really, industrial agriculture is really focused on that short term gain, and it sort of has lost that relationship to build healthy soil that then feeds your plants. And there's something like, I think it's like 2% of farmland in the country actually goes to growing food, like mixed vegetables. The rest is all for commodity crops, mostly like corn, which is either feeding livestock or it's feeding us with sugary products. So we're actually not even growing as much food as you might imagine. If only 2% of our land is growing food, it's like, well, no wonder food prices are considered high. We're really subsidizing that more profitable industrial approach. So I know it sounds terrible, and it is. But
well, I've heard the argument, though, that as wonderful as organic farming is, that it would not be practical to do that on a large scale. In other words, there's a reason why we do industrial farming. We have hundreds of millions of people to feed in this country, and lots of other places as well. And it just would not be feasible to do that through organic farming. What do you think about that?
I have a couple thoughts. One, there's another issue that is talked about a lot, I think, these days, or there's more awareness of, is the issue of food waste. I don't know if it's the latest statistic, but nearly half of the food we grow ends up getting wasted, either because we grow too much, it doesn't get to market fast enough, or we have imperfect standards of what we want, or there's a whole lot of other reasons why that happens. But just the fact that so much of what we grow we end up wasting, there's huge things we can work on to sort of change that, so that we're actually eating a lot more of the food we grow. I think, as I said before, the fact that so little of our land is going to food, like 2%, like if instead of growing corn syrup, essentially, we were focusing on growing food, I think we actually would have more than enough land to feed everybody without any issues. I don't think we necessarily have a lack of, even today, like food being grown. It has more to do with just that we're putting a lot of subsidies and energy into these non-food crops. We have a lot of inequalities in the food distribution systems and how people can access food. And then on top of that, with industrial agriculture, again, we've seen, like, maybe in the short term you get a nice yield or profit, but long term you're essentially destroying the soil. There's, after a certain number of years, you kind of have lost your ability to grow any food without these massive and more massive amounts of chemical inputs. And those have real environmental costs. They're polluting waterways, they're poisoning the farm workers who are harvesting food. Like, those are real costs that don't always get factored into that. And so when we look long term at how we're trying to grow healthy communities and live, basically just have, good lives without exposure to all these chemicals and environmental destruction, it's sort of impossible that industrial agriculture in the long term sustains itself. And you see models of that in other parts of the world where some of these industrial agriculture techniques were introduced, like in India and other continents, where they're now grappling with the fact that it's destroyed the environment, it's poisoned the people, and it's made, it's very expensive. So you actually have to, you have to buy all these GMO seeds and buy all these chemicals and inputs, and instead of being able to save seeds like you might have done generations ago. Or you look at models of indigenous foodways where they were able to, feed their people without all of these techniques for centuries and centuries and centuries. So I think we actually have thousands and thousands of years of successfully feeding ourselves through traditional organic practices, and it's only in recent history that we've been, reliant on this industrial agriculture system. And I guess one final point is that a lot of what is happening in industrial agriculture, like the chemicals, the fertilizers, those all come out of companies who were creating chemicals during wartime, and they needed something else to do with their product. They didn't want to just shut down their factories. So they said, we can generate nitrogen as a fertilizer and then, push it on farmers and make it part of how they grow food. And, the fact that its roots are in these companies just trying to make a profit, it just really tells you where that narrative comes from about organic agriculture not being able to feed people. It's really coming from these industrial motivation, profits, and history.
I would imagine, though, that even though industrial ag, just by virtue of its size and how well designed it all is now, that there are clearly great efficiencies to that. But I would imagine that as far as how much food, the amount of food, the harvest that comes from that, if you compared that to organic farming, I would think it would be less. Would you expect to get more crop from an acre of land of organic farming compared to industrial?
I think it really does depend on your specific practices, and I'm sure there's different studies that say one or the other. But I would argue on, if you're looking at over the long term, over many years of farming, you'll get more production out of that organic acre, especially when you are looking like at the inputs and outputs and how much is going into it. Then if you look at organic or industrial, which maybe it has like a couple years where you're just dumping it full of nitrogen and you get unsustainable growth. But then what happens in year 3, 4, 5, 10, 20, 30? At some point it really catches up. And the cost of that, when you look at the real inputs, and if you were to take away all the subsidies that are supporting those approaches, it would end up being a much less efficient way of growing food.
Okay.
Mike, I would like to add a couple things over here. The industrial farming also is heavily subsidized, and organic farming is not. So if we even put half of the money that they put in industrial farming into organic farms and towards organic farmers, I think that it would enrich the community to do well. Another thing was also that came to my mind was that organic food is nutritionally dense, one, and the variety, because of the biodiversity, you get a larger variety of foods that you eat. And for healthy community, healthy body, you really need nutritionally dense food and variety. From what I understand, that at one given point there were 120 varieties of greens that we ate right here in Pacific Northwest, and now if you go to the grocery stores, you will find like maybe at the most 10 varieties of greens. So for human health, we do need that nutritionally dense and the varieties back in our diets, which industrial farming will not be able to do with their monocropping.
Let's shift to water a little bit. Could I expect that organic farming would use less water typically than industrial ag?
For sure, they will use less water because the soil will be healthy. It would have organic matter. So organic matter would hold the water longer for the plants. Since the whole environment would be healthy, the plants would be healthy. There would not be as much runoff of the water. It would all be held in place. And also, there would be less pollution of the water. So, and I think that drip irrigation is another thing that comes to mind that farms would normally use, and drip irrigation waters a plant where you need it, and and it drips slowly, so the land has like time to absorb the water. Um, versus I've seen on industrial farms, they have these sprinkler systems that are overhead that spray the water, which a lot of it evaporates into the atmosphere right away. And I'm guessing that a lot of it also becomes runaway on the farmlands, along with all the chemicals it takes into the waterways for us.
Let's talk a little bit about the Soil and Water Stewardship Program. This is one of the cornerstones of your organization, yes?
Um,
Yeah.
Chris, do you want me to take that one? Okay. Yeah. So I would like to say it is a cornerstone of our program of Tilth, but it is actually one of the many wonderful programs. But I soil and water stewardship in its current form is a 9 months program. But I was looking at the history of this program, and it is very interesting. It kind of morphed from it is sort of imitated itself from the master composter sustainability steward program, which was offered to the residents of Seattle. It was funded by the Seattle Public Utilities, and I think that at some point I think it was earlier than 2016, they were able to bring the program to East Side, and they called it the Master Recycler Composter East Side. And in those days, it was a program that was just 1 month training, and it was 6 sessions, on couple of them on weeknights and then on Saturday. So the total training was 21 hours, and after that, the participants were expected to do tabling events and volunteer work. But since then, because of the funding and just a lot of, I think, feedback from the community, the program is now 9 months. It starts in March, ends in November, and it works with participants throughout, where they meet one weekend each month. On Saturday, they meet on Zoom, where they learn from our teachers in house from Tilth, and also some guest speakers that come who are expert in the subject of the month or the topic of the month that we are covering. And then on Sunday, they are able to go into the different community gardens and help the community, support the community gardens. I'll give you an example. We start with food systems. So this last weekend in March, Saturday, we learned about food systems. We actually talked about industrial agriculture versus organic, and we spoke about all the different impacts of it. And then on Sunday, we started seeds for community gardens. The participants seeded over 40 flats, and I'm thinking thousands and thousands of seeds that will be distributed to different community gardens. So that was an action item that they can participate in, where something they feel empowered that as an individual they can do, as a community that they can come together and do. And um, and they also did some restoration work where um, they managed the blackberry in part of the Rainier Beach Gardens. And what they are going to, and they planted native plants over there, and they're going to plant fruit and berry trees, which is going to be a U-pick garden for the community. So soil and water stewardship works in the community uh, to bring more access to organic foods,
And
nutritionally dense foods to the
And
community.
beyond just the food aspect of that, Chris, do you have some other projects you'd like to talk about related to this
yeah, I
program?
think like Anita was talking, the fact that it takes place over 9 months, and so we're able to really learn about soil composting, saving water resources, managing stormwater, permaculture and garden design, ecological restoration. I mean, just a lot of topics that are actually all sort of interconnected, and it really is meant to be this very empowering experience for participants where they learn this, but then they apply it really hands on, working with community partners. So I know some of the projects, that stand out to me over the years, like we've helped with several different rain gardens. There's a beautiful one at McAuliffe Park in Kirkland where Anita works at the garden, and it's just this beautiful example of a rain garden that helps to kind of capture and hold rainwater from, in this case, a barn roof right behind a historical barn. It's planted with these native plants, and there's actually even a cistern connected to it as well. So it sort of is just this beautiful sort of demonstration project that also, as people visit the park, they're able to learn about, how rain gardens work, how cisterns work, and then that can inspire them to maybe do that in their own yard. I know the city of Kirkland offers some rebates and support to help homeowners with that. It's very common in this area to support those solutions. And then another project, this was also in Kirkland at Emerson High School just this last year. The school garden there didn't necessarily have space for a large rain garden, but they were able to kind of create a modified rain garden in a container, like a big plastic box, essentially. And that is under the downspout from the roof. And so the water goes in, there's plants that help to filter and clean it and kind of store that water before that it gets released. So that was just a really cool project to know that it's at a local high school.
Very nice.
And then some of the projects we do when we do the month of water conservation, we have installed drip irrigation in many community gardens, and we one of the benefits of doing drip irrigation is that the gardeners don't have to stand for hours and hours watering in the hot summer days, and so I get so many emails from the community members saying how successful the harvest has been because of the drip, and it makes them really happy. We've installed drip in Redmond High School last year. Before that, we've down in Tukwila at a couple of community gardens, and yeah, that's one very popular
Very
project
good.
that soil and water stewards have
And
installed
the
in
sites
different
you've been
community
talking about,
gardens.
can residents visit those?
For sure, these are all, most of these gardens are open to public. They can go and visit them, access them, and they have community volunteer hours as well. So if they go during that time, they might be able to meet people working in the community garden and talk to them and learn more.
Very nice. Well, for people who are not familiar with these concepts, how can they get involved with organic gardening?
So at Tilth, we have different community gardens. We have one in Kirkland, like Chris was saying, McAuliffe Park, which is open to public on Thursdays from 10 to 2. Volunteers come and they work together. They learn together. They learn about organic concepts. They learn about composting. We have one in Wallingford. It's called Good Shepherds at Good Shepherd Center. If they go to the Tilth website, they'll be able to see the volunteer days, weekdays that Good Shepherd is open to them. Then there's one at Bradner Park, and then Rainier Beach Urban Farm and Wetlands down in South Seattle. And Chris can definitely tell you the
Yeah,
days
and if
it's open for
if you
volunteers.
want to just kind of get started on your own, you're eager to get started right away. We it's a publication that Tilth publishes, but even if we didn't, we would recommend it. It's called the Maritime Northwest Garden Guide. It's been around in print for a long time. It's a great, fairly short resource that's organized by month that just kind of walks through what you can plant indoors or outdoors. Like it's a good reference guide, but also just a way to kind of just, okay, I'm going to turn to April and see what I should be doing now in the garden. So we sell it online. I think they still sell it at local bookstores and like PCC. Definitely encourage folks to pick up that as a resource. You can also always call the garden hotline. It's a free resource for Seattle King County area. Tilth staffs it with just incredible horticultural experts who can answer all of your garden questions. You can send them a picture of a pest or a problem, and they can help troubleshoot it or just offer some advice. So I definitely recommend that. And then, if you don't necessarily have a lot of space at your home, I mean, you can grow stuff in little containers on your balcony if that's all you got. But, there's a lot of robust community garden programs in the area, like a pea patch in some areas, or maybe you can participate in some of these community gardening and farming projects. There's also another resource I like called Eat Local First. It's a website, and that's really more to help. You might say you can grow some of your food. You might still want to be able to purchase organic produce and support organic farmers. So eatlocalfirst.org. It's really this online directory. It's like a map. You put in your location, and then it'll just pull up this list, and you can find details on local farmers markets or farms, even restaurants that are sourcing locally. So it's a really powerful tool just to help connect you with farmers and other organic food businesses.
And lots of classes that are offered by Tilth and Cascade on gardening, and I think they are amazing. I've taken some from Cascade, and I've taken quite a few from
Very
Tilth.
good. Question for both of you. What do you most enjoy about your work?
Oh, that's a tough one, Mike. I have to pick
Well, you
one
can
or
pick
couple.
two.
Okay. I enjoy the community aspect. I love being outdoor with all the community. It's always filled with joy and it's very pleasant. And no matter in what state of mind or health you come to the garden, I find that after 2 hours, 3 hours of working in the garden, everyone goes from there feeling happy and just in a joyous state of mind. Maybe tired though, but happy. And so the community aspect is really important to me. I love it. And just getting my hands dirty and playing in the soil has always been fun for me.
Last year for Earth Day, I live in a homeowners association, so we don't have our own property outdoors. It's all common area. But for Earth Day last year, we have a drainage area that was getting too full of soil and debris and things like that. And the city had told us we needed to straighten that out. So we put together a little community group to go in, and we spent half a day out there working on that project. And it wasn't even really fun stuff like making a garden or putting in plants. It was pretty dirty, just trudging through the mud and moving out stones and things like that. But we had such a good time together, just like you're saying. And there were folks that who were my neighbors, and I kind of knew them, but didn't know them that well. And we just got to spend the day together. And at the end of the day, we all stood around and we could look at just see with our own eyes the results of our work. And it was a really good feeling. It was nice.
Yeah, I feel like,
Chris,
especially, everything Anita said, like, I think working at Tilth and, I work with wonderful colleagues like Anita, very inspiring, to be surrounded by all these folks who are just passionate and interested in learning. We're always learning about new things. But I think that idea of, being in community, being able to work outdoors, especially during the pandemic, we were still able to spend a lot of time with volunteers and community members because we were outdoors in the garden. And, I think that just really highlighted how healing and important it is to spend time outdoors, whether that's gardening or neighborhood cleanup, whatever it is, just that time spending outdoors, it really does, nourish your soul. And I think it really does build that community resilience. You get to know your neighbors better, spend time together, work on a project together. Like this is really powerful stuff. And I think that's a lot of what Tilth is all about. So I feel very fortunate to work here.
At McAuliffe Park, we have an urban forest where we have work parties every month. And I have a lot of youth that come there. And we start with a circle time where everyone tells their name and one word how they're feeling. And it'll be 9 or 10 in the morning when we start. And no matter whether it's 9 or 10, everyone will say their name. And there'll be one word that is like, I'm tired. These days I don't know what it is, but whether you from the young age of 11, 12 to adults, everyone comes to the garden tired. And so I think we're spending too much time in our heads, yeah, in front of the screen. And I think it's really important for the community to get out there and move. And you will see after 2-3 hours of doing work at the restoration event, they will all say we are happy. No one says they are tired. So it's very interesting that after 3 hours of physical labor, they don't say they are tired. Yeah. So I really encourage anyone and everyone who has the ability to go out there, be in the nature and work
Indeed,
with
get
the
your hands
community.
dirty. If people want to learn more about Tilth Alliance, what should they do?
They can go to our website, tilthalliance.org. We have a newsletter you can sign up for if you'd like. But yeah, check us out, take a class. We have an edible plant sale coming up in May, where you can buy all your organic veggie starts for your garden. It's a big sale up in Wallingford. I encourage everybody to stop by if they haven't to get all their tomatoes and peppers and eggplants and have a fun day there.
Wonderful. Chris, Anita, thank you for being my guest today.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you, Mike, for having us.
The world's population has exceeded 8 billion people, and we all need to eat. If we're going to live in a way that keeps our planet habitable, I believe we have to rethink our system of food production, how it impacts our water resources, our carbon footprint, our environmental impact, and how organic farming can be an important part of the solution. I encourage you all to learn more about this important subject. Thanks for being with me today. I hope you enjoyed this broadcast. If you did, please like and subscribe and follow us on the socials. You can also find helpful information about Cascade's water conservation programs at cascadewater.org. Have a great day, and remember, we need water.